Welcome to Clasing Equestrian's wrap-up video on how to back the event horse. I'm Daniel Clasing.
And I'm Caitlin Spurlock. We wanted to do a video explaining our system and the way we do things. We were really surprised by the amount of positive feedback we got on our videos. So thank you guys for watching and tuning in for all of the dudes backing process. Dan and I have worked in a lot of different barns and seen a fair number of systems and programs for breaking the young event horse, and we realized that this is just one way of doing things.
The way that we came up with this system, I worked for a long time in racing barns and breaking racehorses. Obviously that's an industry where massive numbers of horses are broken every year. So I pretty much use their system to start with. They always start in the stall and then they usually go to the shed row. In racing barns, the shed rows are dirt, so as soon as you're done the stall process, you immediately go into the barn and you have the walls to guide you. So it's a little bit like a round pen, and you ride around the barn until they're comfortable, and then you would head out to a track. So we had to make a few changes because our barn aisle isn't very conducive for that. It's a concrete floor, so it wouldn't feel quite as comfortable riding a green-backed horse on the concrete. Also, the ceilings are a little low, so it's not perfect, and that's why we integrated the lunging as a way that you can be up there and the horse can get used to having somebody on their back, but you're not necessarily getting a whole lot of signals, not a lot of steering, mostly the horse just getting used to having somebody up there.
Right, so instead of having the round pen or the shed row giving the young horse those boundaries, we're using the person on the ground on the lunge to give them those boundaries. And obviously this system relies on having a fairly experienced person both on the horse's back and on the ground controlling the horse. So, everyone needs to make adjustments depending on the help you have available and your facilities.
Another adjustment I made was for breaking racehorses, the way that they do it a lot is, in addition to relying on the shed row, once they start going out, they go out in groups, and the horses are very reliant on each other, which I don't think is ideal for an event horse. They have to be reliant on you, and they have to be comfortable going out by themselves. We did eventually hack Dude, and he had a buddy when he did that, but I don't want them to be too reliant on the other horse, because then they're more concerned about what the other horses are doing than what you're doing. So a lot more individual riding, we're not riding in groups, I think is the best way to do it for an event horse.
Yes, and being able to get him off the lunge and sort of with the rider on his back, it's really important. And this is where Dan's experience riding the young horses shows that he just keeps him going forward. A horse that's going forward is never a horse that's going to act up or misbehave. They can't buck, they can't rear, they can't be too squirrely when you just keep their hind feet moving. It's the same concept that we have with the older horses, and it starts from day one. They have to be in front of the leg.
Yeah, so that's another important point. If they started misbehaving, which Dude didn't, and the videos are unedited, he's just a pretty good horse, which is the luxury of picking your own horse out, that you can pick something with a nice brain. But if a horse is misbehaving, and that can happen, I would never say that all horses are easy to break. Going forward is definitely the solution. The horses that are bucking, they're going up and down, they're not going out. So the more you can send them forward and correct that with your leg and not your hand. Sometimes you don't have a choice in the matter. Sometimes if they're bucking real bad and you have to go and grab their mouth. But I think start with trying to push them forward, not fix it with your hand, but fix it with your leg.
Yeah, and a few other things that we wanted to mention that maybe we glossed over in the video. In this first 30 days of breaking, he didn't get a day off the whole time. We think it's really important to work with them every day and sort of repeat steps as needed. So every day that we didn't video was repetition of sort of the previous day's work. But he did get worked every day in the breaking process.
And some other things in the stall, obviously the visibility from the outside of the stall is not super, and I think I forgot to mention that all the buckets should be removed, the water buckets, the feed bucket, so that they don't have something that they can bang into and scare themselves. Obviously, we want to control as many scenarios as possible, and that's just one way that they could get spooked. So if there's nothing on the walls that they can get tangled on, nothing that they can bump into and get spooked, that's for the best.
Yeah, and after Dan had been riding, Dude had been set free, we then did start using a mounting block, but it's important that at the start we don't use a mounting block.
Yeah, I've seen many times they'll kick it and they'll knock it down and spook themselves. Also, just in general, I think they get very anticipative when they're really green and they're just starting out. If you try to make them stand and they're fidgeting at the mounting block, I think they're a lot more relaxed if wherever you are, you have the person on the ground just throw you up. Then they don't have a symbol of a person getting on them, so there's one less thing that they anticipate.
Takes away some anxiety.
So the reason we wanted to do this with Dude was, obviously he came here unbroke, but he was a well-handled horse, so I thought he was a good candidate to do this video. And again, he wasn't too bad, which is probably preferable. Like I said, this is unedited, this is just how he was, but it probably wouldn't have been fun for us to try to do all this videoing with a horse that was also carrying on. Also, because we own him, we could, we do sell a lot of horses, and we sell horses that are very nice, but we don't know what's going to happen. He could be a horse that stays around for a while, so I would like it if we could continue the series and hit other major points in the horse's training, like when they start jumping, and when they start going into a contact and in a frame, key points in their training, and then that can give people a timeline for what's reasonable to expect, bringing the horse along from scratch.
Yep, and Dan and I sort of had the idea for doing this video series, just as we've participated in our careers, have grown throughout the sport, we've noticed a shift in the sport. I think Dan and I both love thoroughbreds. We got our start on thoroughbreds, and there's definitely always space for a good thoroughbred in our barn. But we've noticed that as the sport has shifted, we're now seeing more purpose-bred and more sport horse-bred horses excelling at the top levels and sort of continuing on through the sport. And we think that as trainers, that puts much more responsibility on us to make sure that these horses get a good start and can be happy and confident partners as they go on in their eventing career.